Mastering our emotions is not about suppressing them or pretending they don't exist. It's about understanding, acknowledging, and harnessing their power to guide us toward growth and fulfillment. Throughout this journey, we have explored how emotions are not obstacles, but signals, valuable insights that can lead us to deeper self-awareness, clearer decision-making, and stronger relationships. The ability to pause before reacting gives us the space to choose how we respond rather than allowing external circumstances or emotional impulses to control our actions. By recognizing emotions as messages rather than threats, we reclaim our power and become active participants in shaping our own lives. The truth is, emotional mastery doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice, a skill that we refine over time through awareness, patience, and reflection. It requires us to shift our perspective, choosing to see emotions not as forces to be feared or avoided, but as tools to be understood and utilized. As we learn to recognize our emotional triggers, process our feelings, and pause before reacting, we grow into individuals who are not only more resilient, but also more intentional in how we move through the world. The ultimate goal is to become untouchable by negativity, not because we are immune to life's challenges, but because we have learned to respond with strength, grace, and purpose. Emotional mastery frees us from being at the mercy of our emotions and instead empowers us to choose how we engage with them. We gain control over our emotional responses, leading to healthier decisions, stronger relationships, and a deeper sense of peace. When we embrace our emotions as signals rather than obstacles, we unlock the potential to live more fully, more authentically, and more confidently. The power to shape our lives lies within us, and it begins with mastering the emotional landscape we navigate each day. Mastery over emotion is the power to choose your response. It sounds simple, even obvious, but in a world that's constantly testing our patience, pulling at our insecurities, and demanding instant reactions, it's anything but easy. The truth is, most of us are not responding to life, we're reacting to it. There's a subtle but crucial difference. Reaction is impulsive, it's automatic. Someone insults you and you snap back, something goes wrong and you spiral. But a response, that's conscious, it's deliberate, it's a decision, not a reflex. We are emotional beings by design. Our emotions are essential. They warn us of danger, deepen our connections, and bring meaning to our experiences. But the moment we allow emotions to steer the wheel without awareness, we lose control. We become passengers in our own lives, taken for a ride by whatever or whoever happens to trigger us that day. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being driven by what you feel. You learn to notice it, name it, and then decide what to do with it. Most of us were never taught this skill. We were either told to suppress emotions, man up, don't cry, just be positive, or to act on them instantly, as if honesty requires immediacy. But mastery sits in the space between suppression and reactivity. It is a practice, a discipline, and a mindset. It is built through small, daily moments. It looks like taking a deep breath before replying to an offensive comment. It looks like noticing your anxiety before a meeting, but choosing to walk in with presence anyway. It's that moment when your blood starts to boil and you say, okay, I'm angry, but I'm still in control. The ability to choose your response gives you power. Real power. Not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that governs yourself. In fact, the most powerful people in the room are often the calmest. Not because they don't feel anything, but because they've trained themselves to not be ruled by what they feel. They know how to lead from a place of clarity, not chaos. And clarity only comes when you stop reacting and start responding. Choosing your response doesn't mean you don't address problems. It doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect or avoid conflict. It means you choose how you show up to those moments. You can be assertive without being aggressive. You can be honest without being harsh. You can be passionate without being reckless. Mastery is not about denial, it's about direction. Emotions are data, not directives. They inform you, but they don't have to command you. In high-pressure situations, people often say, I didn't have a choice, I just snapped. But that's not true. You did have a choice. You just didn't create the space to see it. Emotional mastery gives you that space. It trains your awareness so that between stimulus and response, there's a moment of stillness. And in that stillness lies your freedom to choose. That space is where your power lies. Without it, you're a puppet pulled by every external string. With it, you're grounded, steady, and capable of leading even when the world is chaotic around you. Developing this mastery is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming emotionally intelligent. It's about realizing that how you feel is valid, but how you act is a choice. When you learn to choose your response, you shift from being reactive to being intentional. You stop letting temporary feelings create permanent consequences. You start leading yourself the way you would want to lead others, with respect, discipline, and awareness. Think about the last time you regretted how you reacted. Maybe it was something you said in anger. Maybe it was shutting down when you felt criticized. In those moments, it's not that the emotion was wrong, it's that it was unexamined. It hijacked your response. But with practice, those moments become fewer. You develop what's sometimes called emotional agility. You become flexible, aware, and focused. You start noticing patterns. You recognize your emotional triggers and choose new paths. You become the kind of person who, even under pressure, responds with calm clarity and confidence. This is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It's a lifelong practice. It requires humility. It requires slowing down in a fast-moving world. It requires staying curious even about your most uncomfortable feelings. But every time you choose your response, every time you pause before acting, every time you reflect instead of react, you're building a kind of quiet, grounded strength that can't be faked. Negativity is external, reaction is internal. This is a fundamental truth that often goes unnoticed in our daily lives. We live in a world filled with challenges, disappointments, and obstacles. But it's important to recognize that negativity, whether in the form of criticism, failure, rejection, or just plain bad luck, is something that happens outside of us. It is not something we inherently carry within us. The moment we allow negativity to seep into our mindset, we start to believe that it is part of who we are. We internalize external events, mistakes, or opinions and let them shape our self-worth and perspective. But here's the key: negativity doesn't have to define us. It can come from all directions, but it only has power if we allow it to influence how we think and act. The most powerful people are not those who avoid negativity. They are those who refuse to let it determine their state of mind. Think about it. How often do we feel impacted by someone else's mood, words, or actions? How often do we take something personally, even when it has nothing to do with us? When someone cuts you off in traffic, when a colleague gives you a harsh critique, or when you face an unexpected setback, it's easy to let those moments shape your entire day. It's easy to believe that because these negative experiences occurred, they now have ownership over how we feel. But if we're not careful, we start making an assumption that negativity is a reflection of our life, and we react to it as if it's the ultimate truth about our existence. This is where the shift needs to happen. Negativity can only affect us if we allow it to. Think about the emotions you feel after an unpleasant experience. Anger, frustration, resentment, these are all natural responses, but they are temporary states, and the key is how we handle them. If we react in the moment, letting these emotions take control, then we have let negativity determine our mindset. But if we step back and take a moment to breathe, to process, to acknowledge that negativity is an external event, not an internal truth, we take away its power. The negativity that happens to us is not who we are. It's just a part of life, and it's fleeting. It's only when we allow it to settle within us that it sticks and starts to define our actions and attitudes. Our response to negativity determines how much control we give it. It's a choice. When we feel the weight of negativity trying to sink in, we have the ability to decide how much of it we want to carry. That choice starts with awareness. It starts with acknowledging that the negative moment, the harsh words, or the failure doesn't define us. It's a moment, not a label. Our minds have an incredible ability to attach meaning to things, but we also have the power to detach meaning from those things. Just because someone criticizes you doesn't mean you are a failure. Just because you didn't meet an expectation doesn't mean you're not capable. Negativity is external. It's simply an event or a perspective, not a reflection of your worth. How you react is where your power lies. When we react automatically, we reinforce the idea that negativity has authority over us. We give away our power. But when we pause and reflect, when we take a step back and ask ourselves, do I want to let this define me? We give ourselves the opportunity to reclaim our power. This is what emotional mastery looks like. It's the ability to separate the external from the internal, to recognize when something is trying to infiltrate our peace, and to make the conscious choice not to let it. It's also important to note that this ability to detach ourselves from negativity isn't about dismissing our feelings or pretending that challenges don't affect us. It's about recognizing that we are more than the sum of negative experiences. We are more than what happens to us. We are the sum of how we respond, how we navigate through the storm, and how we learn from those moments. In fact, the most resilient people are those who experience negativity but refuse to let it become their story. They process it, learn from it, and then let it go. They don't let it anchor them to the past. Instead, they use it as fuel to move forward. The real challenge is that negativity is pervasive. It's not just about people being rude or critical. It's about how we're constantly bombarded with negative news, toxic environments, and stressful situations. But here's the beauty of this truth. No matter how much negativity comes from the outside, we always have the power to decide how we internalize it. The more we practice this separation, the more resilient we become. We learn to live in a world where negativity exists, but it doesn't consume us. We choose not to absorb every negative interaction, every piece of bad news, or every criticism. We learn to let it pass through us instead of settling in. At the end of the day, negativity is just noise. It's like a wave that crashes onto the shore. It's strong, it's loud, and it can shake you for a moment. But once it hits, it's gone. What matters is how we respond in the wake of that wave. Do we allow the tide of negativity to pull us under, or do we choose to stand firm, knowing that we are not defined by what comes at us, but by how we rise above it? Emotional control begins with awareness, not suppression. This concept challenges a common misconception that emotional control means bottling up feelings, ignoring them, or pretending they don't exist. Too often, we're taught that in order to be strong, we must suppress our emotions as if feeling something deeply makes us weak or vulnerable. This is especially true in cultures or environments that value logic, efficiency, and getting things done. Emotions are seen as distractions or inconveniences, things that get in the way of productivity or success. But emotional control isn't about erasing feelings, it's about acknowledging them, understanding them, and choosing how to act in response to them. Awareness is the first step toward emotional control because it requires you to be present with yourself, to notice what you feel without judgment, to observe your emotional landscape as it shifts and changes. Without awareness, emotions have free rein to dictate your actions. You might feel angry but not know why, or you might feel anxious and not realize that it's your fear of failure that's driving your behavior. The key to emotional mastery is not trying to push emotions aside, but allowing them the space to exist without letting them control your responses. Think of awareness as the foundation for emotional intelligence. You can't manage something you don't understand. If you don't know that you're feeling hurt or frustrated, how can you make a conscious decision about how to respond? It's when we're unaware of our emotions that we're more likely to react impulsively, saying something we don't mean in the heat of the moment, lashing out when we feel cornered, or shutting down entirely because we don't know how to express what we feel. In those moments, emotions are running the show, and we're just along for the ride. The first step to emotional control, therefore, is cultivating awareness. This is about tuning into what's happening inside you, your thoughts, your feelings, your physical sensations. It's about checking in with yourself, asking, what's going on for me right now? It's being honest about your feelings without the need to judge them. There's no right or wrong way to feel. There's only what you're feeling in this moment. And once you can recognize and acknowledge it, you give yourself the power to choose how to respond. Awareness also helps you understand the underlying causes of your emotions. It's easy to get lost in the surface level feelings like frustration or sadness, but deeper awareness allows you to explore the root causes. Are you angry because of something someone said, or is it that you feel disrespected? Are you anxious because of a specific situation, or is it that you fear the unknown? Emotions can be complex, layered, and multifaceted. Often they arise not from a single event, but from a combination of things: the way we've been conditioned to react, the patterns we've learned over time, and the triggers that remind us of past experiences. By becoming aware of these patterns, we start to uncover the true source of our feelings. This is where emotional mastery begins, when you understand the why behind your emotions. Once you have clarity on what's driving your feelings, you can make a conscious decision about how to act. Without that clarity, you're more likely to be swept away by your emotions, reacting in ways that don't serve you or anyone else. Emotional awareness allows you to break free from autopilot and take back control. You can still feel frustration or anxiety, but now, instead of reacting out of that emotion, you can step back and decide how you want to respond. Maybe you need to set a boundary, have a conversation, or take a few moments to calm down. Whatever the response is, it's a choice, and that choice comes from awareness. Awareness also provides an opportunity for growth. When you're aware of your emotions, you can reflect on them and learn from them. Emotions are powerful signals guiding us toward areas that need attention. If you're constantly feeling stressed at work, your emotions may be signaling that you need to set clearer boundaries or take better care of yourself. If you feel resentment toward a friend, it might be an invitation to explore what's not being communicated in the relationship. Emotions, when acknowledged and understood, become opportunities for self-discovery and growth. They help you recognize areas in your life that need attention or change, and they guide you toward healthier behaviors and responses. This is a lifelong practice. Awareness doesn't happen overnight. It's not something you can simply turn on when you need it. It requires intention and effort. But over time, the more you practice, the more natural it becomes to check in with yourself regularly, to notice when emotions are rising and to become aware of the stories you're telling yourself. And once awareness becomes second nature, emotional control becomes much easier. Instead of feeling like a slave to your emotions, you become their partner. You recognize them for what they are, valuable information that guides your decisions. And you take responsibility for how you engage with that information, rather than letting it control you. In this way, emotional control is not about suppression, but about mastering the art of awareness. It's about living in tune with your emotions, understanding them, and learning how to respond in ways that align with your values and goals. It's about breaking free from automatic reactions and choosing to act with intention, even when the emotional tide is strong. The more you practice awareness, the more you become the master of your emotional landscape. You are no longer at the mercy of your feelings. You are the one in charge. If you don't master your emotions, someone else will. This is a statement that carries profound weight because it highlights how easily we can lose control of our lives when we allow external influences to dictate our emotional state. Every day we are bombarded with situations, people, and events that trigger emotional reactions. From a simple disagreement with a colleague to the overwhelming challenges of a difficult day, these external circumstances can all influence how we feel. And if we are not careful, we can become prisoners of these emotions, reacting impulsively to every stimulus that comes our way. But when we allow others or external circumstances to control our emotions, we hand over the power to shape our lives. Think about it when you get upset by something someone says or does, you are letting them control your emotional response. You are letting their behavior dictate how you feel. The same is true for every external factor that triggers a negative emotion in you. You may not be able to control what happens around you, but you always have control over how you respond. If you allow someone to insult you and let it ruin your entire day, you are letting that person control your emotions. If a mistake or setback causes you to spiral into frustration or despair, you are letting the situation have power over you. Emotional mastery, on the other hand, is the ability to control how you respond, to be the one in charge of your emotional landscape rather than letting external forces drive your state of being. This is not to say that external circumstances are insignificant. Life is full of things that are beyond our control, and it is completely natural to feel upset, hurt, or disappointed when things go wrong. But the key to emotional mastery is understanding that these feelings are not permanent. The moment we allow them to define us, we lose our power. If we make the choice to react out of anger, fear, or frustration, we are giving the situation more importance than it deserves. We are giving someone or something else authority over our emotional state. In doing so, we risk allowing these emotions to control our behavior, relationships, and even our mental well-being. It's easy to think of emotions as uncontrollable forces, but they are responses to stimuli. While we can't always control the triggers, we can control how we process them. The emotions we feel are like signals pointing us towards something we need to pay attention to. Whether it's a boundary that needs to be set, an unmet need, or an unresolved issue. But if we are unaware of the emotional triggers and responses we have, we end up reacting to the signal rather than using it to guide us in a productive direction. Without awareness, our emotions can overwhelm us, leading us to make decisions we later regret, lash out at others, or withdraw into ourselves. To truly master your emotions, you must be aware of how easily they can be influenced by external sources. The people you interact with, the media you consume, and even the general environment around you can all affect how you feel. Consider how easily a conversation with a friend or coworker can turn your mood upside down. One critical remark, one perceived slight, and your entire perspective can shift. Or think about how a news headline can stir up feelings of anxiety or helplessness. These are just examples of how external factors influence our emotions. But when you are aware of how this process works, you can begin to take control. You can choose not to let others determine how you feel. Imagine a world where your emotions are always in your control. Picture a scenario where someone insults you, but instead of reacting with anger or frustration, you remain calm and composed. Imagine facing an obstacle at work, and instead of letting it derail your entire day, you approach it with a clear mind and a problem-solving mindset. This kind of emotional resilience is the result of intentional mastery. It's the ability to choose how you respond, to recognize that no one else holds the power to dictate your emotional state. It's the freedom that comes with knowing you are the one in charge of your feelings. However, mastering your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them or pretending they don't exist. Emotional mastery is about giving yourself the space to feel, acknowledging your emotions without judgment, and then deciding how to act. It's about recognizing when something triggers a strong emotional reaction and choosing to respond with awareness and intention rather than reacting impulsively. In this way, emotional mastery is not about denying yourself the right to feel deeply. It's about creating a space between stimulus and response, so you can make a conscious choice rather than being swept away by your feelings. When you learn to master your emotions, you no longer give others the power to control you. You no longer allow the actions or words others to determine your mood or your decisions. Instead, you become the one who chooses how to react, how to feel, and how to move forward. This shift in mindset brings a profound sense of empowerment. It allows you to take charge of your life, to show up as the person you want to be, no matter what is happening around you. Instead of being at the mercy of external forces, you become the force that shapes your own experience. It's also important to understand that mastering your emotions doesn't mean you become immune to them. Emotions are a natural and vital part of being human. We will always feel things deeply. The key is not to suppress those feelings, but to understand them, process them, and respond in a way that aligns with our values and goals. When you master your emotions, you gain the ability to feel deeply without allowing those feelings to control you. You can experience the full spectrum of human emotion: joy, sadness, anger, fear, without letting any one of them define your actions or your life. In the end, if you don't take charge of your emotional responses, someone or something else will. Life will happen, and the external world will continue to throw challenges, disappointments, and difficult people your way. But when you master your emotions, you take back control. You become the one who determines how you feel, how you act, and how you show up in the world. You stop being a passenger in your own life, reacting to whatever comes your way, and you start being the driver, intentionally steering your life toward the outcomes you desire. Strength is found in the pause before the reaction. In a world that values speed and instant responses, this concept may seem counterintuitive. We live in an age of rapid communication, fast decisions, and constant activity. Our phones buzz with notifications demanding immediate attention. Conversations happen at the speed of thought, and in many cases, we're expected to react without much time to process. But it's in those precious moments before we act that true strength lies. It's in that brief pause, that space between stimulus and response, where our power to choose resides. It is not the reaction itself that defines us, but our ability to pause, reflect, and decide the most thoughtful and intentional response. Most people operate on autopilot when it comes to their reactions. Something happens, and they instantly react without considering the long-term consequences. When someone says something hurtful, they snap back in defense. When faced with a stressful situation, they become overwhelmed and let emotions dictate their behavior. This automatic way of reacting often leads to regret and reinforces unhealthy patterns. The truth is, if we let our emotions drive our responses, we are more likely to make decisions we will later wish we hadn't. But if we can learn to pause before reacting, we can change everything. The pause is where emotional mastery happens. It's the moment when you recognize that a feeling has arisen, and instead of letting it control you, you take a step back. You breathe. You notice the emotion without judgment. You observe it like a visitor passing through your mind. By creating this space, you shift from being a passive participant in your emotional life to an active one. This moment of pause is where you reclaim your power. It's where you make the decision to respond thoughtfully, not react impulsively. This small but powerful shift can be life-changing. It's important to recognize that the pause doesn't mean you suppress your emotions. Emotions are real, and they're valuable. They're not something you can simply switch off. The goal isn't to deny what you're feeling, it's to give yourself the space to acknowledge those feelings without being governed by them. You feel anger, frustration, or sadness, but you don't allow those emotions to take over and dictate your actions. Instead of snapping back or withdrawing, you take a moment to process what's really going on. You ask yourself questions like, why am I feeling this way? Or what do I truly need in this situation? By taking that moment, you create an opportunity to respond in a way that aligns with your values, not your emotions. The pause also gives you the opportunity to assess the situation more clearly. It's easy to misinterpret events or get lost in the heat of the moment. When emotions are high, our thinking can become clouded, and we may not see the full picture. We might assume someone's behavior is a personal attack when in reality it has nothing to do with us. In the pause, you can take a step back, assess the situation from a more neutral perspective, and make a more informed decision. You begin to realize that not every situation requires an immediate response, and that sometimes waiting is the most powerful action you can take. Taking a pause before reacting also helps you avoid unnecessary conflict. When we react too quickly, we often speak or act out of anger, hurt, or fear. These emotional reactions can lead to misunderstandings, hurt feelings, and damaged relationships. The pause gives you the space to choose a response that reflects the best version of yourself. You might choose to calmly explain your perspective, ask for clarification, or simply let the moment pass. By doing so, you maintain your peace and integrity, and you avoid the regret that often follows hasty decisions. It's also worth noting that the pause is an essential tool for personal growth. The more you practice taking a moment before reacting, the more you learn about yourself and your emotional triggers. You begin to recognize patterns in your behavior, the situations that most often cause you to react impulsively, and the underlying emotions that drive those reactions. This awareness allows you to take more control over your responses in the future. You begin to break old patterns, and instead of reacting from a place of defensiveness or fear, you respond from a place of confidence and emotional intelligence. You become more resilient and less susceptible to the emotional swings that once controlled you. In difficult or high-pressure situations, the pause can be a game changer. Think about a heated argument or a stressful work meeting. In those moments, everything inside you may urge you to speak your mind immediately, to defend your point of view or respond to an attack. But the pause allows you to center yourself, to regain composure, and to respond in a way that de-escalates the situation rather than escalating it. It's in these moments that true strength shines through. The ability to stay calm under pressure, to not be swept away by the intensity of the moment, demonstrates inner strength and self-mastery. It allows you to show up as the person you want to be, even when everything around you is chaotic. In everyday life, taking a pause before reacting can also improve your relationships. It allows you to communicate more effectively, to listen more deeply, and to respond with empathy and understanding. When you pause, you allow others the space to express themselves without feeling interrupted or dismissed. You begin to create an environment of respect where responses are thoughtful, intentional, and aligned with mutual understanding. This not only strengthens your relationships, but fosters a sense of trust and connection with others. In the end, strength is not about force or aggression. It's about self-control and awareness. The pause before the reaction is where you access your power. It's where you make the choice to lead your emotions rather than let them lead you. When you master the art of the pause, you unlock a level of emotional intelligence that can transform your life. You gain the ability to navigate any situation with grace, to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, and to become the person you were always capable of being. Emotions are not obstacles, they are signals. In a world that often views emotions as something to be controlled or suppressed, it's easy to forget that emotions are not inherently negative or disruptive. They are a natural part of the human experience, and when understood and channeled properly, they can guide us, teach us, and even propel us toward growth. We've all been taught to keep it together, to avoid showing our feelings, and to appear composed, especially in high-pressure situations. But emotions are not weaknesses or distractions. They are indicators that provide us with valuable information about our inner world. The key is to shift our perspective on emotions, seeing them not as obstacles, but as signals that offer insight into what is happening within us. Each emotion we experience carries a message. Fear might signal that we are stepping into the unknown, a place where growth happens. Anger could indicate that our boundaries are being violated or that something needs to change. Sadness might be showing us that we are grieving a loss or processing an unmet expectation. Even joy, which we often embrace without question, is a signal that we are aligned with something that brings us fulfillment. All emotions, whether positive or negative, are guiding us towards something important. The challenge is to develop the emotional awareness and intelligence necessary to interpret these signals and respond in a way that aligns with our goals. Often, people experience emotions and immediately try to push them away. We've been conditioned to think that certain feelings, like sadness or frustration, are bad and should be avoided. We try to distract ourselves from discomfort or shove it down until it can't be ignored any longer. But in doing so, we miss out on the opportunity to understand what our emotions are trying to tell us. Emotions don't simply go away when we suppress them. They accumulate and often resurface in more intense ways later. Ignoring our emotions doesn't make them disappear. It just causes them to linger, unaddressed, until they force us to deal with them. When we begin to see emotions as signals rather than problems, we start to understand that they are messengers. They bring attention to areas of our life that require focus, care, or action. For instance, if you're feeling anxious before a big presentation, it may be a signal that you care deeply about the outcome and that your mind is preparing you for something important. Instead of trying to banish the anxiety, you can acknowledge it and use it as fuel to prepare thoroughly. Similarly, if you're feeling frustrated with a colleague or team member, that frustration may be signaling a miscommunication, a need for clearer expectations, or even a personal boundary that has been crossed. Rather than reacting out of anger or dismissing the frustration, you can take it as an opportunity to have a constructive conversation or clarify your needs. Emotions are particularly powerful because they don't just inform us intellectually, they influence our actions and decisions. When we listen to the signals our emotions provide, we are better equipped to make choices that serve us in the long run. For example, if you feel fear at the prospect of starting a new project, that fear can serve as a reminder that you may need additional preparation or that there are unknowns that need to be addressed. Instead of allowing that fear to stop you from moving forward, you can use it as motivation to gather more information, ask questions, and take proactive steps. Fear then becomes a catalyst for action rather than a roadblock. On the other hand, if we ignore or deny emotions, we risk making decisions that are disconnected from our true needs or values. Imagine trying to make a decision while in a highly emotional state, whether that's frustration, anger, or sadness. When emotions are not acknowledged or processed, they have a way of influencing our choices in ways that are not aligned with our best interests. For example, making a hasty decision out of anger might lead to regret later. Conversely, making a decision while feeling overly euphoric might overlook important details or risks. Emotions, when understood and channeled, guide us toward making decisions that are not only more balanced but also more aligned with who we are. The key to emotional mastery is not to disregard emotions, but to learn to interpret them. It's about recognizing that emotions are an essential part of who we are, not something to be feared or avoided. It's about building the skill to sit with our feelings, observe them, and ask ourselves, what is this emotion trying to teach me? Instead of reacting to emotions impulsively, we can pause, reflect, and choose how to respond in a way that is grounded in understanding. This creates a deeper level of emotional intelligence, where we are no longer controlled by our emotions, but can use them as valuable tools for decision-making, communication, and self-awareness. This shift in perspective requires practice, but over time, it becomes easier to understand and manage our emotional signals. When we embrace emotions as part of the process, we become more resilient. Instead of fearing them, we can welcome them as opportunities for growth and self-discovery. This doesn't mean we won't experience difficult emotions. Of course we will. Life is full of moments of discomfort, pain, and uncertainty. But when we understand that these emotions are signals, we no longer feel at the mercy of them. We can move through them with a sense of purpose and clarity, knowing that they are part of our journey, not obstacles to it. In relationships, the ability to recognize emotions as signals can deepen connections and foster greater understanding. When we're able to acknowledge our own emotions and communicate them effectively, we invite others to do the same. This creates a space for empathy, where people feel heard and understood, even in the midst of conflict or disagreement. Rather than avoiding or suppressing difficult conversations, we can approach them with the understanding that emotions are simply signals pointing us toward the need for better communication or resolution. This mindset transforms how we engage with others, creating stronger and more authentic relationships. Ultimately, the challenge is to develop the ability to see emotions as tools, not as threats. They are not the enemy, they are the guideposts on our path to self-awareness, growth, and understanding. By learning to interpret and respond to the signals emotions send us, we move toward greater emotional mastery and a more purposeful, intentional life.